And you are live.
Thank you, Nancy. Welcome to the Cosmic Creating Show. It's, what date is it? It's the 29th of December. Gosh, nearly at the end of the year. I'm your host, Jan Shaw, and I'm known as the Success Alchemist. I do success coaching, digital marketing, and website development. So go and have a look at my website, thesuccessalchemist.net. And today, really looking forward to the show. So I've got Nancy Hopkins with me, who, for those of you who are regular listeners, will know is the founder of the Cosmic Reality Radio Network and also producing. So you've got your hands full today, Nancy. It's wonderful to have you join me today. And I see that the schedule has lots of other shows with us both on, so I hope people don't get an overdose.
Jan, we've got we've got a slightly weak signal here, so let's just hope that it doesn't get any worse. I just wanted you to know that. That's what I was checking. And what'd you say? Yes, we just did a show together. I listened to
the schedule.
I listened to it because I wanted to make sure that we didn't repeat what we said on the previous show.
Good. You did.
Not that I really remember what it was that I did or what we said.
Absolutely. Well, we had lots of fun on the show on Christmas Day, and the other show that you included me in with Dolly and Walt. That was good fun. So maybe we can do some more of putting the world to rights.
Well, we try. That's all we can do is try.
We do indeed. We do indeed. But I thought, before we perhaps get on to more of the global situation discussions, I wonder if you want to share what's happening with the Shungite store, because I've noticed that you've got new products coming along. So, and of course, you've had a change of company structure. So do you want to share what's going on with Shungite? Because we did the Shungite show on Christmas Day, and of course we didn't talk about Shungite at all. So maybe today's a good opportunity.
Well, to be honest with you, I forgot we were on the Shungite show. I thought we were just on the Jan show. So that's what had happened. The Shungite mission, I'm writing a book now. Because we've had so many people ask us for a book on it. So it's causing me to go back to the very beginning and say, okay, what were we doing? How did we get here? What came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's been an interesting little reminiscing kind of, situation. But, well, the bottom line is that it all came about because of the bees. I am very concerned with what's happening to the entire insect community, not just the bees. The bees are like the canary in the coal mine. They're the ones that we're seeing because people keep bees. You can count bees. Oh my God, there's a bunch of dead bees. You can see them. In the insect world, you don't see them. And so, dead bodies, so you think everything's fine. Until you realize, no, things aren't fine. If you don't have the bugs, you don't have life, period. So, things were, in my opinion, still are very critical. And Derek Conduit, the guy that is the bee guy, the one who took Shungite and put it on a beehive and then made all the difference, he was able to demonstrate in 11 weeks that you could have no losses and extensive reproduction. So he went from 50,000 bees to over 1 million bees in 11 weeks. And then came back the next year and did the same thing all over again. Now this time, and this was in 2018, now I said to him, because he's working as a prison corrections officer, and he's driving, like hours every day to get there, and then he'd sometimes have to pull a double shift, and it was like, I said to him, how much money do you need for me to buy you away from that? And God bless him, it was a state job. He was fully pensioned. He had everything to lose if he walked away from it. But in my opinion, he had everything to gain if he did. And he decided so quickly, it took me off guard because, he quit the next day. Because I said to him, what's your pension going to mean in 4 years if we're not here because of the extinction event? And so he jumped on board with us. Now, I'm not sure at all, I still don't know, what it was that prompted Stephanie Dietz, who had been my partner in the nonprofit business, to decide she didn't want to work with us anymore. For all I know, maybe she had something else going on, and Derek was there to take over, so she didn't feel like she was leaving me in the lurch. I don't know. Could be that. Could be. So Derek and I set up another company, this time a limited liability company. I gotta tell you, Jan, all right, Stephanie dumped this on us rather drastically fast. I mean, I'd had indications she was unhappy about stuff, but she wasn't talking to me about it. And I said to her, I feel a disconnect. But she wasn't, behaving like an adult, really. but anyway, so not knowing what was happening, I moved very quickly. And we set up the company, she resigned from the company, and 6 days later we had a new company up and running in Washington State under the LLC. And since then, it's like I've never seen a company turn around as fast as this one did with Derek at the helm. Because I'm kind of thinking maybe he is a clone, maybe 3 times over with the amount of stuff he gets done, Jan. I mean, it's astounding. So I don't want to keep just babbling here. Did you have a question or a specific way you wanted to go, or?
Well, it was really to get some idea on how you're developing new products. I actually saw a post by Derek, I think it was yesterday, with Shungite ink, which rather intrigued me. And, also with what you're doing with the bees, which is so important. I see quite a few posts from people in my circle about the bees, and I always share with them what you're doing with the Shungite bees. But there is a lot of concern out there about the bees, and most people seem to think that it's more to do with the glyphosate, the Roundup and the other toxic chemicals. But the way you're approaching it is quite different, which not a lot of people are aware of. And I just think that it's worth sharing this, because I think people are really awake to the impact that the decimation of the bee population will have on us all as inhabitants of the planet. And you, from what I understand, and with Walt, you're continually developing new applications for Shungite, which would also be great for me to catch up on. So perhaps if you went a little bit more into depth in how Derek is achieving these amazing results with the bees. And, I know from experience that just being out and about out in the country, as I am, you don't see the bees. I remember going, this is some years ago. I think it was in Fort Worth, actually, at the Botanical Gardens. And there was a mass of lavender plants. And you used to hear this amazing buzzing of all the bees on the flowers, gathering the pollen. And it was just dead silent. There was just nothing. And when I walk around the park where I live, if I see a a bee on a clover flower, I kind of celebrate and say, oh, I'm really pleased to see you here. But we're not seeing them in the same quantities that we used to do. So I think what Derek is doing with the bees is so incredible, and the results that you're getting using Shungite is so incredible. So perhaps expanding on that a bit more would be good for those people who, perhaps haven't got that information.
Well, the bottom line is that the bees have now been put on the endangered species list. Okay, if it continues like this, we don't have more than 4 years left as a civilization. Biological life will die. Period. And I'm not going to dispute.
Wow.
I'm not going to explain this in detail. I'm working on. I mean, I've done it before, but it's so depressing. So let's just look at the solution. Okay, This is critical. But let's just look at the solution. Shungite is able to change electromagnetic fields that are rotating. They're simply rotating counter to what is biological life. Your cells are rotating one way, the Wi-Fi is rotating another way, and the Wi-Fi is much more powerful, so it slows down the rotation of your own cells, causing a heat buildup, which we can see in thermography. A person on a 2-minute call with a cell phone without a sticker on it, their entire head, from their shoulder through the thymus area up through their jaw to the top of their head, and on the other side of the head where they didn't even have the phone, turned bright red. We've got the pictures, What this indicates is a heat up, and that heat up is because there's friction between the electromagnetic field going one way and the cells going another. When Shungite's applied, the field is now going in the same direction that the cells are. It's not hurting you. It's still functional, it's still powerful, it's actually more efficient. But that's the basic concept of Shungite. So, Derek was a radio listener. He already had been, he'd studied bees for a few years, then started his own hives. He had 2 hives. And he went through the 2016 year and had terrible results. He was not going to use chemicals. He had sick bees to begin with. Now, how they get the bees is that they go to California for the most part, in the places where beekeepers have trucks that they take around to the almond groves, all the other ones too, but that's what they talk about. And so in the wintertime, where most of the bees are lost, that's just nature, they'll go and they'll replenish the hives, this is beekeepers, by getting more of what they call nooks from these people, that not only do they take the bees around in the trucks and to pollinate, but they also create these nooks for sale to people that need bees, because in California they don't go through the winter thingy that other people do. So his bees were not healthy to begin with, and he lost all of them in the wintertime, over the winter. But by then, he's hearing me yelling, please, beekeepers, contact me. I think that it's Wi-Fi is what's causing the colony collapse, and I think Shungite will reverse it. And he just listened to us, went to our website, bought the nuggets, put 3 nuggets on each of his hives, and proceeded to watch magic happen. Because he put the 3 nuggets over to the side of the door to the hive. And believe me, everything I'm about to say about bees, I've learned from Derek. All right, he taught me everything I know about bees. So when you put the nuggets, anything on a beehive that they don't want there, they are quite capable of just getting rid of it. They'll just push it off the hive. So he was concerned that they might do that, but in fact they didn't push it off. In fact, and he didn't realize this until after the season, when he was doing cleanup and stuff, that they had glued the nuggets to the hive. They didn't want to lose them. And he's got video after video of a 12-inch opening, and over to the side is the nuggets, and all the bees are walking over the nuggets. Now, they did this to the degree that when he did take the nuggets off of, had to pull them off because they were glued, they had contoured them like into little mountains from rubbing up against them. Because what they were doing was they naturally knew that whatever this stuff was made them feel good. So when they would leave the hive to go out doing their work, they would rub up against the shungite and take little flecks of shungite with them. And we have found that the smaller the piece of shungite, the more energetic it is, which is contrary to what most people would understand as making sense, but in the world of quantum physics and homeopathy, this makes all the sense in the world. They have got a little piece of shungite that's acting like the pendants do when we wear them. It's protecting you from the electromagnetic waves. Now, this is all me talking, this is all theory. We don't have any proof until Derek comes into the picture. When Derek comes into the picture, everything changed, because now we had proof that what we were saying was true. Not just, we had some empirical proof, but the bees were proving everything we had said, because it was so incredibly magical. Now, you got a sick bee. All right, let's flash forward to 2018 when he started up. Now, he had bees. He had an entire well-populated Shungite beehive, because as the winter sets in, the bees get into a ball, and inside the middle of the ball is the queen, and they just keep rotating, going around. And I forget what it's like, but it's they go in, they keep her, they move around her. The ball's always moving, so that the different bees are deeper inside, therefore they're more heated. But there's the attrition of just that bees don't live very long anyway. So over the winter time, if you get through the winter with a couple of thousand bees, you're not doing too bad at all. But Derek got through the winter with the Shungite bees with a very well-populated beehive. So then he goes and he gets the nooks, and he brings the bees in, three nooks, sets up 3 more hives right next to where the Shungite beehive was. And these bees were incredibly sick. Now, because by this time we're trying to challenge how you got sick bees that you're introducing to a hive of Shungite, let's say an area where good Shungite bees are. Are the Shungite bees going to succumb to the mites that they've got, to the obvious disease they've got? Because disease can be seen in a bee because they leave diarrhea trails. All right, so you're seeing these black smudges, you know that these are sick bees. But what happened was exactly the opposite. As soon as he set up the beehives and he put the 3 nuggets on the new beehives, all of a sudden, it didn't take but a couple of weeks. These very sick, aggressive bees went from being sick and aggressive into being very docile and healthy. Now, this is unheard of. He should have lost all those bees. And in fact, they should have infected the Shungite bees, but they didn't. Because the year before, what we discovered is that, yes, indeed, we don't have colony collapse when they've got Shungite in the hives, but you also don't have any diseases, and he's not using any chemicals. There's no chemicals involved in this, because the bees could adjust their immune systems. I mean, they've been around since the beginning of time, and without really any changes genetically. So you've got bees that came from millions of years ago that are still the same bee, but they're able to adjust to the environment, maybe faster than other species. But that was my key to understanding what was happening to the bees. Because I thought right away, I got the message as Wi-Fi associated. So I did a study, not right away, but I did a study like last year to try to look at it from, okay, let's just look at the whole thing. And what happened was the Wi-Fi was introduced. And if it was a fact that it was toxicity, well, the toxins in the glycinate and all of the other things were there, okay, before they started putting out the cell phones. You didn't have a worldwide collapse. They put out the cell phone towers, and they start going worldwide. And I found people, like there's this guy in India, and he was the one that, he had some credibility, and he was talking about that. He said, just look at what happened. If you watch the proliferation of the Wi-Fi systems, you see a proliferation in the colony collapse disorder. He said, the only thing that holds it all together worldwide is the Wi-Fi. So that was what I was trying to say to people, that if you look at what happens, there's a big die-off. When they first introduced Wi-Fi, the areas that they introduced it in, there was a big die-off. But then the bees, they went like, oh crap, well, all right, let's just adjust. And so in the following years, it got a little better, because the bees were adjusting to the new frequencies. And then they came out with 2G. Boom, another big die-off. And then gradually another, they're coming back. Well, they went up to 4G, and by 4G, they're not coming back. They don't have the numbers. So they're getting hit and boom, hit and boom, and hit and boom. And 5G, we're all dead, so we're not going to 5G. We're not going to talk about that today. But when Derek last year was able to essentially capture, what happens is the bees overpopulate. There's too many of them for a hive. So that's when they do what they call swarming. And half of they make another queen, and that queen flies off, and half of the hive flies with her. And they start up another hive someplace. Well, they make this ball, a swarm ball. It's just this huge ball of, depending on how many bees are in it, how big it is, but a huge ball, and in the middle of this thing is the queen. So if you can get that, and he did it quite a number of times in 17, he would find where the ball had gone, so he'd get up to the tree, and he'd basically, all he would do was be pull down the tree so it just dropped, and underneath it he'd have a big box, and the box would catch the bees. Okay, well now, these are bees that sting you. And yet, the Shungite bees are so docile, he doesn't even have to suit up when he works with them. He doesn't use smoke. He doesn't put on any of those things. When he has to deal with the bees, he just walks over and deals with them. None of his family's ever been bit. Well, not never, but because initially, you got aggressive bees and that sort of thing, but not from Shungite bees. It's amazing to watch. There was a video, and for some reason, Maureen was walking on the right there in front of the camera, and she just walked through a swarm of bees that were waiting for her to open up the door. I don't know what they were doing, but there was a swarm of bees. She just walks through them, doesn't even think about it, because these bees are just so healthy, happy, joyful. And so he proved that Shungite worked. Now on top of that, he got a hold of some of the Shungite powder. We sent him some of the powder. And he took a small tray, like something you'd keep a silver dollar coin in, like a plastic container. And he put about 1 gram of the powder in there. I think it was 5 grams. And he just put it by the door. Now, when I was trying to figure out how to get this powder to the bees, or how to get the Shungite to the bees, I thought about putting out the powder. But I was like, I don't know, but he tried it, and what happened was that they went over to it, and they said, oh my goodness, look at this, hey, everybody over here. And within, by the next day, there was no more powder. They had walked through it, and it was all over them, all into the hive. And within, essentially that very day, they started making more queens. And within a couple of weeks, they swarmed, which is, again, unheard of. He says that in a normal hive, an apiary, where you got more than one hive, that you might see 1 or 2 hives swarm in a season. You don't see every hive swarm, and sometimes twice. That doesn't happen with no chemistry. So this year, because of the business, he got so focused on doing the business stuff that he didn't have the time to capture the swarms. But that's okay, because all they did was go off into the mountains of Washington State, the Cascade Mountains. Now this is where I just was like, I mean, I was dancing. I was just like, yeah. Because here he is busy doing what we're doing, and then the bees are out there going out there and doing what they're doing. Well, pretty soon, the neighbors, now this is the first time that this is the first year he's lived in Darrington. He's always lived in the area, but this is this particular town. And the neighbors started telling him, I don't want you to think that we always have this much growth. And he says, we've never seen flowers like this. It's just like they're out of control. There's so many flowers, and the fruits are coming crazy, and the apple trees are so big with apples that the limbs are breaking. And oh, by the way, the grape bush that's hanging over your fence there that used to have kind of small sour grapes, those grapes are so big and so plump that the Moonshine Bob is going to come and get them, and he's going to collect them, and he's going to make some moonshine. And moonshine did show up. It was kind of like late at night, and the dogs went off, and there was a little bit of a hostile kind of confrontation initially between Derek and Moonshine Bob, but thank God the neighbor had told Derek about Moonshine Bob, and so they became, friends, because Derek said, no, he said, these grapes are so good, my dogs are eating them all the time, and it's not good for dogs. So Derek was kind of like, yeah, please, take them. So, anyway, Derek has been promised moonshine from Moonshine Bob, but we think that probably Shungite moonshine might be so good that Bob may not share. But the message here is that just by the addition of, let's say he had another 1 million that went wild. Maybe it was 500,000. But in that town, just introducing bees that are pollinating. I'll bet you when you're out there and you're walking, you don't see the lavenders in bloom like you used to. If you don't see the bees, the lavenders are not in bloom like they used to be.
Right, because it's like the virtuous circle, isn't it? Presumably, the bees, the flowers attract the bees, and the bees support the flowers.
It's the beauty of nature. There's always a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, that's what made me so happy, was to see that the results of him letting him go wild was of such impact that the neighbors saw it. You couldn't argue with it. And when you go to the store now and you get, this has been happening for years, but it's getting even worse. You go and you buy fruit, it's terrible. It tastes awful. It's because there's no pollination. There's not enough pollination. When a bee is unhappy, they die. When a tree is unhappy because it doesn't have the pollination, it doesn't give you good fruit. So these are things that we've missed as we were arrogantly thinking everything is fine. Not me, but some people. So what has happened since then with the bees is pretty extraordinary, because, he ran into the same thing that I ran into with him. I'm telling people, please, beekeepers, contact me. And he does it by himself. He's a beekeeper. They like to do things on their own. They don't sort of play nice with other people, I think, I mean, maybe that's why they're beekeepers. I don't know. But it seems like the community of beekeepers was just not responding. And yet Derek and I are putting out all of this amazing information all over the internet. I'm on internet radio. He begins to go on internet radio, talking about the bees. And then eventually he starts having people contact him saying that they're doing the Shungite experiment, but not talking to us. So we were like, well, yeah, but we need to know the results so we can report the results to the next people. And that has been a ongoing problem, and we're trying. That's where a lot of the, let's say, our hearts are want to focus on this while we're still doing things with the Shungite itself, what I'll get into in a minute. But the impact of what he could do, what the bees could do in such a limited time, showed A, how very important they are, but B, it showed that we were right. With just the Shungite, they were being protected. Now, if it was toxins, I still have to, when this is, see, some of these things, they fall off the radar, and then you go, oh yeah, we didn't do that yet. I really want our honey tested for the glycinate, because every honey tested by the FDA was coming back with traces of it, some of it very high. And so the FDA, instead of continually telling about this bad situation, decided they wouldn't report about it anymore. So you don't even get FDA reports of how much stuff is in the honey. I don't think there's any of that in our honey, because I've seen Shungite clear glycinate from an entire field of 7 acres. And that's another story, but those are the stories that seem to be propelling us to more and more of a, wow, how powerful is Shungite? Well, let me tell you the story, because what happened was that this, I think her name is Janet. Oh God, I'm so bad with names, Janet. It tickled me that Walt was calling you Janet. I know. I didn't know who he was talking to at first. Who's he talking? Oh, Janet.
Yeah.
Okay, so this, let's just call her Janet. Her name is right there. I think that's it. Okay, but anyway, she has 7 acres that she is renting to farmers for the growth of hay. And she's only, hay's the only thing that she's allowing to be grown on that property, because she doesn't want any chemicals. You're not going to put chemicals on hay that you're going to feed your animals. Well, she got a new tenant, and for whatever reason, they put Roundup all over the place. She went into such a state of frantic desperation, because in her mind, this killed the land. Oh my God, you can't get it out of the land. But she had been hearing about Shungite, and in fact had gotten some Shungite, not from us, but from some local chemist. And she just knew that the Shungite was the answer. So what she did was, and she was still, it was funny because she was still in panic, but she still took action. So she took these nuggets of hers, and she went out to the 7 acres, and she was very funny. She said, I don't even believe in numerology, but I waited until 11:11 a.m. She said, I have no clue why. But she dropped some of them in the middle of the acre, and then she walked the entire peripheral of the acre dropping nuggets. And while she's doing it, she's seeing the glycinate and the toxicity come out of the soil. And Shungite works with your thoughts in order to manifest or enhance your manifestation. And that's basically what she was doing. But then finally she gets a hold of us, and I talked to her, and Derek talks to her, and Walt ended up getting involved in it. So by the time I get there, Walt's going to send her a device, and Derek is, she asked Derek, she said, Derek, do you think Shungite can clear up the glyphosate? And he said, well, yes. He never hesitated, okay? Now, that little exchange between she and him, he gave her certainty that what she had just already done would work, all right? And then I don't even remember the Walt connection, but he was involved in it too. And then she gets a hold of me, because she says to Derek, she wanted to hear me say it, you know. She trusted Derek, but she still wanted to hear me say it, okay? So she doesn't have to worry anymore. So I get her on the phone, and I'm going to her. Explain to me did you already do, and she tells me about walking around with a Shungite and talking to Derek, and I said, because, to be honest with you, I'm scanning that acreage, and I don't see any poison on it. I don't see any toxicity. I think you've already taken care of it. So she says, well, what do I have to do? I have to test it? And I said, well, the testing for glycinate is very expensive. It's $1,000. Only because you can't afford it and I can't afford it, and that's why they have it at $1,000. It's just BS. But you can do muscle testing. I said, and she knew muscle testing. She was into the things that we're into. She knew the muscle testing. She had a friend of hers that did this, and I said, okay, I said, if you can bring her out there and muscle test, you'll be able to know whether it's gone or not. So she sets it up. She does that, and sure enough, the muscle test showed that there was nothing toxic in the land. But by now, Janet has gone, I wonder about the little stream going through my property. Because my property hasn't got it on it, but the farms up above do. So she goes over and she takes two vials of water from the stream that's running through this property. And in front of the person who's, doing the muscle testing, she drops 3 nuggets in one of them. Well, the woman tests both. They're both very toxic. No, don't drink that. Okay. But then she had the water in the 2 containers. One of them had the 3 nuggets in it. The other one didn't. And she said she was very careful to keep them, feet apart. They were not next to each other. Good. So the woman tested the one that had the Shungite in it, and it was perfectly, yeah, you can drink that. But the other one was awful. It was full of toxins. And so Janet says, okay, she says to the woman, get ready to muscle test again. And she takes the 3 nuggets that are in the water out and dropped them in the one that hadn't had the Shungite in it. And she said, now muscle test. And they did a muscle test immediately, and the woman was stunned because immediately, instantaneously, it's actually 4 seconds, instantaneously, the nuggets had purified the water. Now, the only reason you can possibly get that kind of, reaction that fast is because it's working with the energetics, not with the chemistry. And it is this rotating field of energy that when toxic material, which is rotating the opposite way, that's why it's toxic, when the toxic molecule hits the Shungite field, the same thing that happens to an electromagnetic signal, it wants to reverse. It wants to, because now the Shungite field is so much more powerful than the toxic field. And when it starts, the molecule starts to turn, it cannot turn like an electromagnetic field. And it loses its molecular cohesion, and it falls into atoms. That's why they never find toxic buildup in Shungite water purifiers. It's not like carbon that absorbs the stuff into it and then holds on to it. That's not what happens. It just disappears. And the scientists in Russia, maybe they know now. Maybe they've been listening to me. But when I I had such a hard time finding that kind of research, Jan. It took me a couple of years because you needed to have a Russian on-site study by Russians that was a Russian study that was immediately translated into English, because one of the problems I was having initially was that the Russian would be translated into French or German and then into German English. It was like you had translation problems every time a new language was introduced. And I finally got back to 2 separate studies done by Russians, and the Russian was immediately translated into English, discussing that they both had the same mission: find out when you have to change Shungite in a water purification thing, just like your carbon thing, your British. When do you have to change out the filter? And in both cases, independent research, they could not find any buildup. There's no toxic buildup in the Shungite. So what happens to it? It loses molecular cohesion and falls into atoms that are harmless. So, back to the bees. The bees are demonstrating that, yes, it's electromagnetic pollution that's causing the destruction of the bugs. We're proving that if you use Shungite to protect them, and Shungite orgone devices to reverse the fields at the beginning. See, all of this death and die-off could be stopped, in my estimation, if the telecommunication companies would listen to what we're saying. We give them a device that's a nothing device, really, because we're using quantum energy. Stick it on the very beginning of the system that's putting out the Wi-Fi system, and then along the way you would have to have other ones, because every time you have a secondary system, you need more Shungite. But we could do it. We could save the world just by putting these Shungite devices on the telecommunication system that is there. We're not talking 5G. The 4G system. It would reverse. You'd stop killing all the bugs. They would come back in droves very quickly. Because the other thing that is so astounding about Shungite is that when you have a field of energy and you add Shungite to it, like in your house, when you add Shungite to your electric system in your house, that electric system now begins to act like a source of fuel, if you will, to the Shungite field, producing a healthy environment. It's just not keeping the bad environment away. It's actually, the more Shungite you put in, the more Shungite is radiated out into your energy fields. So if we can get to the telecommunication companies, make the changes, in the beginning, at the cell towers themselves, we just put these magnetic orgone Shungite devices on the every cell tower, it would start beaming positive, healthy Shungite energy, which would in fact promote growth within the insect community. And it can be done in a single season, but it has to be massive commitment on the telecommunications side of things. So unless the geopolitical environment changes, you're not going to see that kind of reaction. So,
well, I was going to say, a lot of this is deliberate, isn't it? Because presumably if you put the devices on the cell towers, it wouldn't only affect the insect population, it would affect the whole population.
oh yeah,
And
people's minds would people would begin to think.
Isn't this what they're against? Isn't this part of the whole agenda of, dumbing down and killing people off with chemtrails and everything else?
Exactly. I mean, in the same sense that, well, I've said that when I found, when I was led to Shungite, that it was leveling the playing field. Because for me to stand there and say, your cell tower is killing me, you got to take it down, they're going to say, no, we're not going to take it down. We don't care if it's killing you. But if I say, your cell phone is killing you, if you'll take this thing and put it on your cell phone, we're all going to live well. Oh, all right, well, we could do that. Right? I mean, it's a different type of way of going at it.
Yeah.
And that's what...
Because it's killing the perpetrators are as much at risk as the targets.
Well, this is what I think is that we sometimes think that every banker is evil. Every industrialist is evil. There are all these evil people running around all over the place. I don't believe that's true. I believe that there's a lot of good people that were blackmailed and manipulated into doing bad deeds, but in their hearts of hearts, if I thought that everybody was as evil as being portrayed, I wouldn't even bother. I'd say, end the experiment, pull the plug, this isn't working, I would have. I mean, I wouldn't have even pursued it. But I see too many people that are really, 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 really good people And then there's people that are doing bad things, but they're not bad people.
Mm.
I mean, there might be, 70,000 sealed indictments out there, but I bet you there's only a few hundred of them that are the really, really, really bad people. And the rest of those people have been tricked, have been blackmailed, have been mind controlled to do evil things. And that those are the first people that will turn around and say, what do you want me to say? Because I'll tell you the truth. I just can't do this anymore.
Mm.
Q himself posted something to the effect of, you have no idea how big the revolution is, how many people are involved in it. And I think that one of the things that the cabal does to us is to say, we're so big you can't hurt us. It's like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah.
I am the Wizard of Oz, right? And then you find out it's this little turkey. Well, I think we're in the same boat. I think that these people are not as dangerous. My goodness, Jan, if these people were so overly in control of everything, I suspect that David Wilcock would be dead, David Icke would be dead, I would be dead, a whole bunch of people would be dead and silenced. But there is just too many of us to kill us all.
Yeah,
and they're
absolutely.
not that powerful. Don't underestimate the strength of your enemy, but also don't overestimate what they can do.
No, and the thing is that the way that this is being done is not through a head-on confrontation. It's being very cleverly done so that they're actually entrapping themselves. I mean, Q also says these people are stupid, because they fall into the traps that are set for them. And, of course, they've put all these things in place to further their own agenda in terms of the monitoring of everything and the recording of everything, but they didn't allow for the fact that very same tool could be used against them.
Yeah, I listened to a couple of Edwin Snowden's interviews. Snowden being the NSA guy that, released so many documents that changed everything. And it was really interesting listening to him. He wasn't telling me anything I didn't know, but the way he presents himself, it's like, look, there was a problem there. And whistleblowers were not being listened to. In fact, a whistleblower would end up, without a family and without a job, because they would go after them. So he actually, learned from previous whistleblowers what not to do. And the truth of the matter is he was in contact with the anonymous hackers before he ever went to the press and said...
Yeah, you were talking about that on the other show, weren't you, about the dark web and how he was passing information to them on the dark web long before Q emerged.
Yeah. But, I don't, well, you said something that made me think of Snowden. I don't remember what we were talking about right before that.
We were talking about the surveillance systems actually being used by the good side to entrap the very people that had been using it, thinking that they had it all under control. And of course, that's why Hillary said, before the election, if POTUS gets in, if Trump gets in, we'll all hang, because of course all the information is there, which when they lose control of it can be used against them.
Which is why they were so stupid. They built this amazing system. When I was in the military, I was in the Army Security Agency, which is the NSA of, it's the Army's version of the NSA. The Navy had one, the Air Force had one. So, but I had to coordinate a lot of stuff with the real NSA. So, one of the stories I tell over the years is, for some reason I wanted to know. Oh, I know what it was. The FBI comes to me, and I was the I was the expert on Soviets' ability to do electronic warfare. So the FBI comes to me, and they monitor the goings-on in the Soviet embassy. And they had gotten a phone call that they recorded from a real estate agent. And the real estate agent is calling the Soviet embassy. And the conversation went sort of like this. There's this building, and it's called Fort Meade, and I'm a real estate agent, and I just really want to know how many people work there. And every time I ask somebody in America about it, they say it doesn't exist, but I can see it. I can send you pictures of it, right? But they also know it doesn't exist, but it exists. And he says, I'm just wondering, do you guys know how many people work at this building? And the person that answered the phone said, can you hold on a minute? Yeah. And it didn't take 4 minutes before this person came back and gave the exact figure of how many people go to work at Fort Meade's NSA building. Right? And so the FBI is trying to tell me, my God, the Soviets, it didn't surprise me that, but what surprised me was how stupid the Americans were. Why he's looking at a building and you're telling him he doesn't exist? I think, the road that I call it the universe of divine intervention, took me down to get to me where I am here. But this concept of the secret state, boy, did I get a tour of that thing. Because, and we're off topic here, but I think it might help us understand some of the mentality of what we're encountering within the deep secret state. Okay, so
I don't believe anything is off topic. We always meander exactly where we need to go.
Exactly true. Okay, so I was a Soviet expert in college, and I went into the Army, and I was given a direct commission to a second lieutenant officer because of my college degree. But I went in the Army because the Army had the best drug treatment program that any of us knew about it. And for reasons, I was working with the University of Massachusetts this time, but we decided it would be a good idea if I was going to head up a department to teach people how to be drug treatment people, counselors, which they didn't have at the universities at all at that time, that I better learn what I'm talking about. So they found that this was the best program going there, and so I joined the military to go into learning about drug treatment programs. Well, this was the first mistake, or the first, divine intervention. So, but the Army sees the fact that I'm a Soviet expert, and they're much more interested in that than any drug treatment thing. So they essentially absconded with my future in the military, grabbed me up and stuck me in the Army Security Agency, which was known as the Super Spooks, because most people didn't even know the place existed. It was like NSA. Where is this place? I don't know. There's this little school. The office, the headquarters, was in a building that had been a school for little girls. Jan. Some of the things. Okay, so it's this old building. Money people had to have sent their kids there, little girls, right? Mm-hmm. But it's a little girls' school, but there's money in it. So when you walk into the main doors, the windows in the lobby are, oh my goodness, I don't even know. They've got to be probably 15 feet or more. Okay, and a normal ceiling in a normal story is 10 feet, so this is, a big kind of hall thing you walk into.
Mm-hmm.
But then from there on, everything sort of like goes into a very comical environment to be in, because they were little girls. So the stairs throughout the building are shorter than normal stairs. Right? Which causes everybody walking through the building to look like they're doing a little tap dance. Including some of the most powerful generals of the U.S. Army. I mean, I when I would go there, I would have such a hard time not laughing, because it was striking me as being preposterous. I mean, anyway. But these people, they took themselves very, very seriously. And I ended up being one of them because of the Soviet connection. But they were so secretive that I was sent to Fort Hood, Texas, and met up with some people that I had known when I was in school. Not, military school. Mm. And I had to be there for official reasons, but they were there, and I'm meeting with them. And I came in my Army uniform, and this guy that was a really good friend in Fort Huachuca and the other schools that I've been with, and he looked at me, and he looked at my insignia that said I was with the Army Security Agency, and he said, "You're a super spook?" And I said, I laughed. I said, "Well, that's what they call me." And he said, "I'll never talk to you again." And he turned around and he walked away. And I'm like standing there going like, what the hell? Mm. And I had to beg him to talk to me. But why he had that reaction was because he felt I had betrayed him, because now I've got this insignia. Because he had felt he had been betrayed in Vietnam by the Army Security Agency. He was with a unit that was ambushed. And then he found out that, in fact, the headquarters knew they were about to be ambushed, but it had been known because of intercept of communications by the Viet Cong. So, in order to protect the secrecy of the communications violation of us over the Viet Cong communications, they let his friends die.
Oh.
And I promised him, I said, I will rectify this. And so, when my focus became very much oriented to letting everybody know that everybody's telephones and communications are read by the enemy. Don't send troops into a death trap trying to protect something that everybody knows. It was such backwards thinking, Jan. And, by the time I left the Army, everybody knew this. I kept my promise to him, because it was so ludicrous to me, but it was my first introduction to how ludicrous their secrecy is. I mean, I was continually forgetting what was secret because I knew it, because I had read something in a book or something in a magazine. Much of what they were keeping secret was known by the rest of the world.
Absurd. Oh, it's kind of a blindness, isn't it?
It's so freaky. I can't even tell you. They spent $50,000 to get me the highest clearance you could get. I had to go through vault doors into another vault to look at the information that was so highly secret that nobody in the world knew it. And I'm looking at this stuff, and I said to the major who was in control of this particular facility, I said, "Have you ever read this?" And he said, "Oh no, I don't have a need to know." I said, "Go read James," which is a magazine on military. Everything in there I already knew. It was insane. We're at the top of the hour. Shall we take a break?
Yeah, why not? I'm having fun listening to all this. So.
Okay, and you're alive.
Thank you, Nancy, and welcome back to the second half of the Cosmic Creating Show. I'm Jan Shaw, the host, the Success Alchemist. You can find me at thesuccessalchemist.net. And with me is Nancy Hopkins, who, as many of you know, is the founder of the Cosmic Reality Radio Network, and I'm very honoured to be part of it. So we were having a nice discussion that meandered somewhat, Nancy, in the first half, but I think very interesting, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot of more interesting things in this half of the show. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, what's your impression about the Julian Assange situation? Because I had heard, this is some time ago, that there was talk of him coming to testify about all of his knowledge of what's been going on. But I haven't heard anything of that recently. Are you aware of anything relating to that?
Well, my understanding is coming from the position of what do I suspect the white hats, the oath takers would be doing, and they would be saying to him, just be quiet, stay there, don't do anything, we're working on it. Because right now you don't need him, being brought into the picture, unless it's being brought in by... I got to tell you this. All of a sudden there was this posting, and I went, what? And I click on it, and it was my first introduction to the fact that Donald and his wife had flown Christmas night to Iraq. And it was one of those situations where it was like, I don't even remember, one of the networks it was a video of him talking to the troops. And this was kind of a little spooky because one of the things that was said early in a Q post was that when it all came down, Q would not be in the country. Interesting, hey?
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Oh. So, anyway, but this particular video led me to another video. And this was clips of President Trump's inauguration and the speech that he gave. And I think I heard it, but I don't think I really heard it, because now, and as I'm listening, as I'm going through this process, I'm thinking about Q. Because Q's allurement to me is that he says these things, cryptic statements that may take months before they all of a sudden make sense.
Even a year in some cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was kind of like going through my head as I'm listening to him. Because, Jan, if you listen to what he said in their faces, told the rest of us exactly what was about to happen, and that's exactly what we've been talking about. To the point that, and I've got to go back and listen to it, so I've got it better in my head, or else do a transcript of it, because they've got a close-up of him, and he's in front of the podium. But right behind him, coming, sort of down the stairs, was at least 8 American military in full dress, carrying flags, and standing right behind him. And as this is happening, he's saying, it's not me, it's you. It's all of you. And it was like, he said, these are the people they're the ones in front, I'm in front of them, but they're behind me. He blatantly demonstrated visually that he was working with the United States military. It really
and
was.
There was that stop when he, the symbolism of military around, well, they were all lined like a semicircle, weren't they?
We've got a poor connection, and you did break
you
up.
That?
Yeah, you broke up. Could you try it one more time?
Yeah, there was a photograph of Trump in the White House, in the Oval Office, I think it was, with this semicircle of military around him. And wasn't that when he actually said it's the calm before the storm?
Yes, I think you're
I'm
right.
not sure if
Yeah,
it was the same.
I think
I
so.
think it was, and the journalists were saying, what do you mean the calm before the storm? And he said, you'll see.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
But what my reason for bringing up the discussion about the secrecy, when you're dealing with these, somebody pointed something out that I found fascinating, and it regards to what happened right after World War II, because we had all of these men that had been trained as soldiers. I mean, their basic training in life now was that of the military system. And they come over back home, and all of a sudden there is just an acceleration of the growth of small businesses all over America. And the people predominantly involved in them were prior military who only knew the Army system. So inadvertently, the entire structure of the lower echelon of and up to the semi-high echelon of the American industrial community is based on the military structure, which the best way to think about it is you were promoted, and you have to be promoted to seriously stay in, until you can't be promoted because you're working at a job you can't do. It's called the Peter principle. I mean, that's the problem with the military.
I'm very aware of that. It happens in corporate as well.
Well, that's what I'm saying. See, but that's what happens in corporate also, because that is the military. That's what they learned how to do. So, I mean, the very structure of industry is kind of like screwed to begin with, because that's an inbuilt deterioration of that particular system. That you end up with a whole system being run by people that don't know how to do their jobs.
Yeah.
You're right. You know what I'm saying?
Promoted beyond their level of competence.
Right, and because you're in the world of the deep secret state, and that doesn't go very far. I mean, in many industries, you're a defense contractor or you're a defense vendor, you have to go through a lot of hoops. You're not supposed to do this. There's all this regulation and all this control, and you actually have to hire companies just to take care of the paperwork that's involved. It's insane. So they keep it all secret. They keep a whole bunch of bureaucratic stuff happening all the time. And then they put you in buildings that are being filled with electromagnetic energy like every place else, and you can't think straight. So my suspicion is that we are not in as bad a position as we have been led ourselves to believe. If we can adjust the electromagnetic systems throughout the world, and it's happening. Every time somebody uses a Shungite sticker on their phone, you're essentially it's almost like a virus. You're infecting a particular part of the system that your phone is attached to. Now, this gets into metaphysics. I mean, we're outside of what would normally be thought of as quantum slash. We're into metaphysics, where you think of in terms of energy is the source of everything. And Shungite just happens to have a molecule in it that rotates 20 billion times a second, because it has a geometry giving it 60 null points, or voids, or doorways to the quantum field. And because we were led to understand the connection between silver and the connection to the quantum field, when you only have the raw powder, it pulses. It goes, opens, closes, opens, so you get a pulse. When you got silver, for whatever reason, I I don't know yet. You open the door and it stays open, so it's a continual force of quantum energy. And what do I mean by quantum energy? Quantum energy is proto-energy. It's the basic spark of, more even than just life, the basic spark of a reality. The simplest little piece of energy that you can get to. That's the quantum field. It's full of it. And you take that energy and you build whatever you want.
Because so you're talking about the 0 point field.
A 0 point field opens the door, but see, the 0 point field in Shungite, in the fullerene, there's a molecule, 360, you've heard of it, the 360 fullerene. That's 60 carbons, and those carbons are aligned in a geometric formation that essentially creates 60 null points that open the door to the quantum field. And that's why Shungite does what it does. That's why it's so powerful, because of the geometry. And all you need is one of these molecules. In fact, you don't need any more anymore, but that's another story. But it all comes from this connection to the quantum that allows these Shungite fields to be so powerful. And then they work with human thought. I think maybe we've touched on this, that manifestation is happening faster, and with more. You can't argue with it. It's like, oh, I wished I had a piece of banana bread. Your neighbor next door comes over and says, would you like a piece of banana bread? It's like you can't deny that this is totally manifestation. Because this is more beyond chance or synchronicity even. And that's happening more and more. I think it's happening more and more because the grid of Shungite is growing exponentially. Every time anybody touches Shungite, anytime anybody starts to use it for any reason, it adds to the energetic signature of Shungite worldwide. So I tell people, I say, you don't actually need Shungite in your possession to be able to access its magic. All you have to do is take the magic of Shungite energy that's already there and use it to enhance your own thinking. So you've got a water problem. Think of the water problem being Shungited. That's why that woman, just by her thoughts, and she had the Shungite and she was dropping it around. But why it worked so fast was because when she asked Derek, can the Shungite clear the field, the 7 acres? And he said yes. He added the thought form to that image. Then she asked me, and I added. And she had asked Walter, and he had added. So when people get together and they see something clear of chemistry, it's pure again. It can happen. It does happen. And this goes back to Emoto. Dr. Emoto, and the water, the magic of miracle of, what is it, the magic of water? The crystals?
Yeah.
Are you distracted? Is your dog trying to tell you something?
She was just about to start squeaking her toy, and she's stood at the door looking hopeful, but she should be okay because I walked her before we started the show, so. Because, of course, usually I do this from the library, but now the library hours are changing, so I'm actually doing it from home. So it's a slightly more distracting environment, let's put it that way.
So, no, I can tell you anything you'd like to know about the new products, but, again, Derek his mind is always going. He's very much like Walt that way, that they're always thinking about something new. And Derek, well, first off, he's expanded the offerings of the honey products and the wax products. The one that you mentioned, the Shungite ink. Now, we had we didn't want to offer Shungite paint. We offered the powder. But then no, people wanted us to have the paint. So he makes Shungite paint. It comes like in a container, like you'd have a fingernail container. But you can take this paint and you can paint it on like Bluetooth wires. Places on those awful watches that you shouldn't be wearing, but you could put it on dab it on there, and just when
the Fitbits and things like that.
Right. Any place that you can't put a sticker, you could put some of this paint. That's for sale on the store. And then he decides. Well, see, what part of it is that he goes out to trade shows in the Washington area, and there's a lot of people who come up to him and say, "Oh, could you do this? Could you do that?" And one of the things that they'd been asking for was that they wanted some Shungite ink. So he put together this Shungite ink, and he found this awesome fountain pen. It's made of bamboo. And it comes in a bamboo case, and it's beautiful wood. Just by itself, it's a beautiful piece. So I said, send it to me, and I gave it to my artist friend Cindy. And she was here. Actually, I opened it the package when she got here, and so we had a little problem figuring out how to get the ink in the pen. But now he's got directions on the page and directions in when you get the packaging, and it's not very difficult. It's just trying to, somebody's got to step you better through it than the Chinese probably. I don't know who made the pens, but anyway, because we make the ink. So, well, he makes the ink. So she gets it.
So what was the concept behind people wanting the ink?
Artists.
All right.
People want, because, Christia Cummings-Slack, she put, as soon as we introduced her to Shungite, she was using Shungite powder in her paints for her artwork. And there's been other people that have done that. But apparently there was some artists and whatevers. And I think it also is that because Shungite is so respected in that circle of people, that they understand the energy of it. To them, if you take a sacred image and you do it in Shungite, you've imbued it with energy that you wouldn't get otherwise. So they wanted to play with it. So anyway, he sends it to me. She gets the pen filled with the ink, and then she starts to write, and she went, "Oh my God!" And she said that she had never, the only time she had ever felt anything like that before was some kind of a something pen that was very expensive, high level, but she loves it. So she was the first person to endorse it like that. But I signed my name, my signature, just my signature, and it was the best signature I'd ever signed. So.
Oh wow, I'm intrigued. So perhaps, so if you were to write your manifestation intentions with a Shungite pen and ink, that could be pretty awesome.
That's intense. Wow. It would.
Yeah.
Yes, it absolutely would. Watch out, Derek. Order some more pens.
I was going to say, I'm just looking at the website now, and I'm thinking, oh, I could really do with one of those. And some ink.
Yeah, well, he sells the ink separate, or you can get the set. But I'll tell you that pen, it's expensive. Well, I mean, most everything is expensive to me. I still live back when I could get gas at 35 cents a gallon. I swear, I don't. Anyway, but I think it's $99 for the set with the ink in it. But and I said to her, she asked me the price, and she said, she says that's a great price. So she is a professional who works with this stuff. She used to work for Disney in their animation department. She used to, make some of those, all the things you saw in there, they in one way or another were painting them or making them. So she's, high quality artist with experience that loved them. loves them.
Mm.
So that's one of the new
Yeah.
products.
I'm thinking of writing another book, or eventually getting around to writing the book that I should have written years ago. So maybe I ought to handwrite it with a Shungite pen.
But then you'd have to have somebody type it.
Well, that's true.
I got to tell you, I I'm supposed to be writing this book on Shungite called Shungite Reality, and I normally have no problems writing, but there was too many distractions and I wasn't getting it done, and it began to feel like, oh, this is work. So Walt said, get the dragon, where you talk into it and it types for you. And so I said, okay, so I did. Oh my gosh, what a difference, Jan. At first I was having trouble with it. I just was irritated. But then I realized I was irritated because I wanted it to do what I wanted it to do. I was not going with what it did, what it could do. And when I just sort of I have to go through notes. I use notes instead of the Word Perfect document program. Because all of the things behind it are gone. It's just text. And because sometimes it would jump around the pages because it's seeing something in, I don't know what it was doing anyway. So I do that. I talk into the microphone. And doing so much radio, you don't want silence. And I finally got it into my head that when I stop talking, everything stops. The tape doesn't keep going with blank, silence. Nothing happens, it just stops, just like if you're typing. And I was like, oh, so now I can think of something, say it, think, say,
Actually voice responsive.
Oh, and it's good. It is very good. It has taught me that even though I thought I was, very, very articulate, that I do I do have a drawl. Because all of a sudden it'll type out some drawl thing, and I'm going like, oh wow. And I know that whatever it interpreted was because I was the word I used I had, got lazy on. And, but the beauty of it is that I was trying to remember, I was actually, because I forget that I've got this voice capability and I'll start typing something. And I wanted to say the word toroidal. So I'm about to type it, and I'm thinking, how is that spelled? And I look at the microphone, and I went, toroidal. And the darn thing spelled it out correctly for me. I was like, oh, because so many times I have to stop and think about how to even start a word that I use without thinking through my mouth, but when I'm writing, I probably do the same thing. So
yeah,
anyway.
I'm wondering how it responds to different accents, because I know if I'm calling a company and they've got this automated menu, and because I've got an English accent, sometimes it just doesn't understand me at all because it's programmed to recognize the American accent. Although having said that, I mean, there's so many different accents in America, so it's but it's interesting that they end up, I go through this menu and we didn't understand what you said.
Well, what they do with the dragon is they give you some text to read, and as you're reading it, they're adjusting their system to comply with your voice.
Right. So you're trading it in effect.
Excuse me?
You're training it.
Yes, you're training it as to your voice. So, let's say like this show. If I wanted, and I haven't gotten into this, but this is one of the reasons I got this dragon, was that I've got a lot of audio files, of course, right? And in some of these audio files are amazing discussions, especially about the science of Shungite. So supposedly I can play this segment to the machine and it will be able to transcribe that stuff. I'm hoping that that's what happens. But I wondered about that. How would it go from Walt talking to me talking? I mean, that might be, I don't know what they mean by that, so we'll look into it. But I highly recommend anybody that does a lot of this work try the dragon thing. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, I've got it on my list. So, so Nancy, I wanted to go back to a topic that we were talking about on Christmas Day, which was the prison barges, because there was some interesting information shared, and I actually had it opened on my computer if I can find it again about because you were saying about Q saying Trump needed to be out of the country. And there are a couple of intriguing things that came up. One of them was that one of the people following all this, a guy who's named, his title is CG on Twitter, put this thread together about how some of the key people that we are expecting to be indicted, arrested, and so on, had disappeared off Twitter. And there was a list of 6 of particularly tweets that were put out on Christmas Day. One was Obama tweets a picture from 2014 and passes it off as a 2018 Christmas tweet. Hillary Clinton tweets a picture from God knows when, to quote him, and passed it off as a 2018 Christmas wish. And it was actually a photograph of what looks like the white, could even be the Oval Office, I'm not sure, with a very youthful looking Clinton, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton, and a back shot of Chelsea as a much younger girl than she is now. And George W. Bush's Twitter feed has disappeared completely, I think. No tweets from Podesta, no tweets from Comey, no tweets from Brennan, no tweets from Kerry, and no tweet from Michelle Obama either. Joe Biden, which is very interesting. And there was also the call sign on Air Force One, I think, on the way to Iraq was, I think it was RCH 358. And what the Anons were saying is if you rearrange that, it becomes HRC 835. And apparently 835 is a code for military tribunal. So I'm wondering if there are things going on behind the scenes here that are actually taking these people to the barges, getting them off to Gitmo. Have you heard any of this, Nancy?
I heard exactly what you heard, and nothing more. I did track the barge, and I do have a picture of it in New York. It's the same barge. That prison barge story looks very real. It has 800 beds in it, they said.
I also heard that part of the improvements at Guantanamo were also the development of a dock that would actually take these barges when they arrive.
Well, that would make sense. I've been meaning to look into, see if there's anything on the facility, but they probably wouldn't let that be in Google. Maybe I'll go over to the dark web and look. You ever been to the dark web?
No, I haven't actually. I have to say that when there was all this